Welcome back to another episode of Most Bookish. I want my brown people to be in their brown countries. What's the deal? What's the deal? Is it a panda? Is it a star? Who is a kind of man author who writes important fiction? She was transported. So this is another book stop, which is where I go to a bookstore and I pick out some books. I read them, obviously. This video's book stop was Steamy Lit in Deerfield Beach, Florida. It is a bookstore that caters to romance novels. They have all kinds. The spice, I got this from them. The spice level, there we go. The spice level is all over the place. It's owned by a Latina. I believe it began as a mail order, like a book of the month, but it was called a Steam Box. And so you would get a romance book with maybe some little stickers and some cute stuff. It still exists, but then she opened the store in Deerfield Beach, and she's actually about to open a store in Tampa, which I'm really excited about. I had put off going to Steamy Lit. I hadn't intentionally put it off, but I probably left it towards the end because I wasn't sure if I was a romance girly anymore. When I was a teenager, I was all about the romance. I loved the stories. They were easy to read. They were all of the fuzzy feelings. And as weird as it sounds, they're really good beginner reader books. The actual stories themselves were pretty simplistic and easy to follow. And so while I wouldn't necessarily read those stories today, trust me, I tried. And cleaning out my bookshelf, I tried to read some of them to see if I could keep them, if I would ever read them again. No, the answer is no. So while I wouldn't read them today, there's a huge audience for them. People who at any age are starting out on their reading journey, they're really accessible. It's why romance is the largest genre of books. I truly believe that. I don't believe it's because it's, all spicy and women are getting all of their spicy stuff from books, because the year is 2025 and you can get spicy things from everywhere. Let's be honest. The internet is alive and well. When I was young, there were much less avenues, right? So you were going to like the video store or reading a magazine, but the romance genre is keeping the book world alive. They're cute short stories that are easily digestible, and you get a happy ending, and who doesn't love a happy ending? However, I don't really relate to those books anymore. I'm not interested enough in like 36 scenes of spice for me to pick up a book that has a bad story. Like if there's 36 scenes of spice and the story is fantastic, wonderful. It's not that the story is bad. It's that there's not a lot of layers to these stories. It's like a Lifetime movie. They're not bad movies. They're so cute and they're enjoyable. But in my reading, I need less simplicity. I need to feel seen in the story. I need to relate to it in some way. It needs to speak to some experience in my life. Like stories, books literally save lives. I want it to teach me something, either factual or about myself. That is my relationship with books today. So it makes it a little difficult with some of these romance novels because they are not things that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for that version of romance devoid of more than that. I don't feel like that's the whole story. I don't feel like life goes that way. I don't feel like it's Cinderella happily ever after and then everybody was wonderful. I feel like these stories of people's lives are more complicated than that. But the bookstore was so cute. They are so amazing on social media. They go to all kinds of events, conventions. They host events. They're really great when one of their authors is releasing of having events there. They'll have a whole motif set up. So many people come, especially for romance authors or niche authors like that, like to have a store that caters to your particular demographic. You know that you're going to get the most bang for your buck of your people showing up if you're a romance author and you go and you have your event at a romance bookstore. They've been really successful with the model that they have, and there aren't a lot of independent bookstores in South Florida. And it was just time. Like I said, you know what? Let's find out once and for all if I still have a romance girly hidden somewhere in this heart of mine. Picking out a book was difficult. Being in the store was easy. It was adorable. There were mirrors everywhere. There were like little neon signs. There was opportunities to take pictures all over the place. It was a very romantic space. It was super cute. If you're trying to get content, this is the place for you. They had a little cozy seating area. It's not humongous. The little plaza that is in is also very cute. They also have like a little bar next door in case you want to get yourself a drinky after. Overall, the space, adorable. I loved it. However, I had to pick out many, many books and sit in their little sofa and read parts of the books and then put them back and pick another one and read parts of the books and put them back. Like, I tried Ali Hazelwood. She's super popular. The ones that I found there, not for me. I found other ones that I had seen online. I just wasn't working. So I was picking like things that I hadn't seen, things that just looked nice. They didn't care that I was sitting there looking through all of these books. In fact, like, I was taking video at some point and the girl asked me if I wanted her to turn off the music, which was really thoughtful, but it also speaks to the fact that it's a place where you can video and that's the expectation, and they're very accommodating for it. After much back and forth, I found my 4 books. So these are their bags. Very cute. It has a little Steamy Lit logo on it. I also got this candle that says, "Fuck Valentine's Day, I love you every day." It smells like clean laundry, and I love that smell. This one was really cute. It's called Smells Like a Plot Twist. I just love the labels on these, I think, more than the actual candle. It smells like flowers and like cinnamony. So I got those candles. They also have a bunch of really cute things in their middle section. They have bookmarks, they have candles, they have all kinds of candles. They have other goods from like Latino-owned businesses. They have candles that have like horchata on them. They have different labels. It's, again, worth a trip, regardless if you are a romance person or not. If you're not a romance person and you're like, what am I going to do in there? There's a little section hidden in the back. It's like one bookshelf that's for normal books, non-romance books. So you can still go. First novel is going to be Emily Henry's Beach Read. Did what it was supposed to do. It's going to be a did what it was supposed to do. I have heard about Emily Henry all over the place, the same way I feel like I hear about Taylor Jenkins Reid all over the place. She is definitely a book talk author, but not in a derogatory way. She's just very, very popular, but you could find her books on the book talk table at some bookstores. I picked this one because I felt like it was the more popular one that I had heard about. It's about an author who inherits a beach house after her father passes away, and she has writer's block. She's a romance author who has writer's block. And it turns out that her beach house is next door to another author who is a kind of man author who writes important fiction, and he has writer's block. And so they agree to swap each other's genres, make an attempt to write each other's types of stories, and the hijinks ensue from there. The reason why it did what it was supposed to do, and I liked it very much, it's one of the 2 that I liked out of the 4 that I bought, is because it did fluffy romance. It was definitely fluffy romance. It was small town. There were like small town characters. They were all adorable. It's a beach town. It's like all of the cutesy things that you might want from like a summer romance. It wasn't so fluffy or so cliche that it was horrendous. It was modern. Like, she asked him, do you have a condom? Right? So romance in the modern sense, like written today, usually has a lot of consent written into it. It has a lot of responsible acts more than other stuff in the past. That exists, but not in an in-your-face. Like, she didn't say, do you have a condom? And then have a whole conversation with him about STDs. There are books that are doing that, and this was not one. Thank God. So some quotes from this book that I wrote down were, life is pretty much a series of good and bad moments, right up until the moment you die, which is arguably a bad one. Love doesn't change that. I have a hard time suspending my disbelief. Besides, can you think of a single real life romance that actually ended like Bridget fucking Jones? That kind of reality, but it's cute. Like the conversation back and forth between the man and the woman is super cute. It's very, very well done. And it's quick. It was a very quick read. It never felt like, oh, I need to get through this. And then another one was, oh, honey, we can never fully know the people we love. When we lose them, there will always be more we could have seen. And then there was a really cute portion that her father had written to her. It was a note. It was so sweet. It said, you have made me a new person, and I know this is who I will be for the rest of my life. And that was just so touching as a parent. Like, I'm going to be your mom forever, your dad forever. There was acknowledgement of grief in here. It wasn't overblown, but it was human beings living through life and finding each other. Like, he's not sure if that kind of romantic love exists because one day we're all going to die. How can it be romantic if there's no such thing as a real happy ending? And I felt the reality in that. By the end of it, you want there to be romance in spite of. I don't know what more you could ask for. I'm glad I found this one. because this one gave me hope. I'm going to read more Emily Henry, and it made me realize, okay, I am still a romance girly. It just has to be a particular type of book. And it doesn't have to be a very serious book, but it has to be relatable for me. I like this. I wanted a beach house. I wanted a little book club. It was just all the cute things. She was funny. She was walking around with like wine in her purse. It was adorable. Also, the spice in this one is, I would say, light spice in the sense of frequency. I would say moderate spice in the sense of explicitness, but it's really short scenes. It's a very small portion of the story. So you should read this one if you're not sure if you like romance anymore and you want to find out if it's really for you, like all these silly romance books. Why would you want to read that? This is a book that you're like, I can do it. I might be able to do it. You know what I mean? I gave it 4.2 stars, or actually technically 4.2 pandas. I feel like the 3s are a little negative, but everything can't be like a 4.5, right? Because that's like getting too high. So we're going to say 4.2. We're going to call this one Pleasantly Surprised. Bookshops and Bonedust. I picked this up because of the cover. I loved this cover. It seemed like whimsical and silly, a little bit of mixing of maybe fantasy and romance. I picked it up. I started reading it. It is about an orc. Your heroine is an orc, and there are other creatures like dwarves in here. I didn't realize this was the kind of prequel to a really popular book talk book, Legends and Lattes, that had come out years ago that was kind of the starting of the whole cozy fantasy idea. Because those books, they were really popular and they're really well known. Those books had a different cover. It had like the orc on the front. So I didn't know this was from that family. I just started reading it and it was really well written. And so it was like, if I'm going to read a fantasy about an orc, might as well read a well-written one, right? This one is dressed up like a swashbuckling, fantastical adventure, but it's really a love story about books. It is a love story about books, about your journey as a reader, about finding a book that makes you want to be a reader, about an entire town falling in love with reading, about wondering why we do this when it's not a billion-dollar business. The love that the author has of reading and literature, it shines through everywhere, but it's not like overwhelming. So many books that are like cozy or romance have some kind of reading element in it, right? Like, because usually authors are readers, and usually, hopefully, authors love books. So that kind of personality type can often find itself in a book. Hint, hint, the last book I just talked about was 2 authors. It happens, but it's usually either very light or it's not done in the most enigmatic way. Like, oh yeah, you know, they love reading. I know. But every once in a while, there's somebody who's making a piece of art about people who love books. Think You've Got Mail, like the movie, where it made you want to own her little bookstore. It was so adorable, and there was just so much like warmth and love in that idea. And this is that. I loved the fixing up of the bookstore. I loved how the friendships were made. There's no spice in this. There's a kiss, but there's so much love between everybody. They become like a little family. It's so cute. I'm going to read you guys what I wrote because it like sums it up. What I wrote for the themes. It's cozy fantasy, but actually small stakes fantasy, but actually creatures of all kinds in a bookshop next to a delicious bakery fantasy. Speaks to all the homey things we love. Cleaning, organizing, eating, togetherness, friendship. Love, but innocent love. The only part I would say that was negative about this story is that the author didn't really include like dimensions early on. So like all of these creatures are different sizes, vastly different sizes. So when she's talking about an orc, I'm trying to picture like orcs that I've seen in movies. When she's talking about dwarves, I'm doing the same thing. I needed more like reference, like the dwarf comes up to her kneecap. Like I needed to know how big and small everybody was. It wasn't until I don't know how many chapters in, I was probably like 2/3 in before I realized like he had a scene where the orc had to bend on one knee and it was still taller than the dwarf. And so I'm like, how is that ever gonna work? I don't know. At one point, she introduces a ratkin, who's the owner of the bookshop. I don't know what a ratkin is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how big it is. I don't know how little it is. I can't stand when books go on and on and on for pages with exposition. This book was such a quick read. The dialogue was wonderful. It was like the actual writing was soothing to my brain. It was a break for my brain. It was wonderful being in this world. I could have used a little more descriptors though, just a little bit. So I'm going to read you some quotes that are really about, like I said, the love affair, the true love affair in this book. The first one is like when she first finds herself enjoying a book because she's recuperating in this town. That's how the story opens. She's recuperating in this town and she has nothing to do. So she starts reading after she gets the recommendation from the ratkin. Despite the uncomfortable chair and the ache in her leg and the backwater in which she'd been abandoned, she was absorbed. She was transported. She was elsewhere. If that's not the most simplistic and like wonderful definition of what it feels to read, I don't know what is. On reading in a bar, the barkeep was a blur beyond her vision and the noise piled up against the walls, leaving her alone in the center of a perfect sphere of story. I read in public a lot. I know there are people who can't. I read in public at bars all the time. And it was like my heart talking. The writing, there are little excerpts of like pretend books that are being recommended. And that's so cute. Along with they do a blind date with a book, which you guys already know. I did that video. If you look back in my videos, after, of course, you like and subscribe, you look in my catalog, you'll see my blind date with a book video. One of them came from Steamy Lit, which I read. It was a Caribbean heiress in Paris. But the ones that they put together, I would have bought every single one that was labeled like that. There was one called Knitting, Murder, and Wine. This is a label on the outside cover of the blind date with a book, which is when you wrap it up and nobody can know what the books are. Another one was Treason, Clockwork, and Horticulture. Are you buying those books? I'm buying those books. So read this if you want something that talks to your heart about how much you love books, but also is just a nice, cute break from reality and just a really well-written book. I gave this one 4.1 stars. Because again, it deserves to be in the 4s. It's not really Emily Henry in the sense of, it felt a little more silly. There is a place for that story, but I feel like a 0.1 less is fine. I don't feel like it's insulting. It just makes sense. This next one we're going to call It's a No for Me, which is unfortunate because it's written by a Latina, Liana de la Rosa, Ana Maria and the Fox. It is the most traditional romance story. Basically, young woman is in difficult circumstance, ends up having to marry man because of that. Then they have, the steamy night and realize they were meant for each other. And there's like some things happening around that, but basically the whole story leads to that. She's an upper class Mexicana, was to flee Mexico because her father is really high up in the government that Napoleon is trying to overthrow. So they send her and her 2 sisters to England to wait it out so that they can't be used as political pawns against the father or the regime that's trying to repel Napoleon's invasion. That sounds interesting. It's not. Only because, guys, the pages and pages and pages of exposition. I cannot tell you how many pages would go by with nobody saying anything. There was so many thoughts, feelings, backgrounds. It was too much of talking about things happening and nothing actually happening. It was too much opinions, everybody's opinion about the world, about how women are treated, about the political climate, about how brown people are treated in England and in the world. It felt like almost every conversation that they had was about how either the girl's father had been misogynistic and treated them badly and repressed them, or it was about how the world was mistreating brown people. The man in the story is a British PM. He's in the House of Commons and he's mixed race. His father's from Scotland. His mother was an escaped slave from the Americas. Historically, that existed. Historically, there were black PMs. All of them were mixed race. Historically, the situation with Napoleon existed. There's a foundation for a really good story. However, the story was not happening. What was happening in the world was being relayed via every conversation that was had or through pages and pages of exposition. Like it needed to replace the pages of exposition with action, tell the story that way, and then have the conversations be about the people's thoughts because she was putting all the thoughts and feelings into the exposition. She talks about her inspiration for this book coming from the history, and there are 2 more stories with the sisters. There are 3 Luna sisters, and she's going to expound upon that history in those stories. I love the idea that it's kind of a historical romance, or that was the intention. But again, I would like to be in the history versus being told about the history. If I want to be told about the history, I would get a nonfiction historical book, right? Is that just me? I don't know. And it wasn't even like a traditional vehicle for spice where like, you know, the story is not complete to center around the spice because there was only one spicy scene at the very end. What I would really love to see, and I had this feeling with the other Steamy Lit book that I read, that was the Blind Date with the book. So it's not part of this haul because I already hauled it. I don't know. I already talked about it, but An American Heiress in Paris was a Dominican woman with her sibling who had gone to France. She had gone to France and she ended up meeting a Scotsman and their relationship came about. I want to know what are the stories of Mexicanas and Dominicanas from this time period who were falling in love with Mexicanos and Dominicanos. I have read a billion, fillion, fafillion, trillion romance novels, paperback, from the 80s and 90s. I have read about European romances so many times. I don't want to read a Bridgerton. I don't want to read any more European stories with brown people in them. I want my brown people to be in their brown countries. So we're not spending a story lecturing white people about how they're supposed to be treating people. While like that fulfills a sort of fantasy of like, oh, that would be wonderful to tell them those things. 1, I don't know how realistic it was back then. I don't know if that was happening. But 2, it's happening like over and over again and it's taking you out of the story. This does not feel like a romance in this difficult time that has these difficult topics to contend with. It feels like a lecture about these things. How much of a bad actor the British establishment was. Yes, this is true. But it was not made interesting. And saying it over and over and over again just felt like space filler. So this one would be really 2.5 pandas, really, maybe 3. I'll say 3 pandas because I want love stories about brown people. I love brown people. I am brown people and I want more and more of those stories. I just want them to be, again, set in reality, set in something that makes sense. Fall in love the way that people would fall in love. Deal with difficult topics the way actual people would deal with difficult topics. The things that were happening and the way that people were communicating in this story did not feel like any way that a regular person would communicate. A lot of the formality that we might attribute to that time period of how people might have talked, you know, darling, blah, blah, blah. It felt like the attempt to do that was just lecturing. Formal speech and like debate speech are not the same thing. This might be one of those books that is just a simplistic story and it is for somebody who's starting their journey. It's just not for me at this stage in my reading journey. All right, finally, we're going to call this one Reserving Judgment. I have not finished this story. I had to stop because this is a story about a young lady who is to inherit a kingdom. It's set in an Asian world, and you open the very beginning pages with them fleeing from the gods that they answer to in their kingdom, who have been keeping them safe from the outside world in exchange that they owe basically everything to. Whatever the gods want, they have to give them. There's something that they did not give them, and the gods have come to wreak vengeance. They're fleeing. Her parents have passed away prior to the story beginning. It's just her and her grandfather, and she gets pushed into a situation where she has to become ruler and figure out how she's going to interact with these gods that she has resentments towards. The author Sue Lynn Tan is often influenced by myths and legends, and you can see that very clearly in this story. And like I said with all the other ones, I kept to my rule of reading some of them. But I feel like with romance novels, I need to read more. Maybe like a full chapter, because the action at the beginning of this makes it feel like, oh, this is going to be a really good story. But then it gets into like dialogue at a certain point, and I was like, uh-oh, because it feels like stilted. I'm not sure what it is Sometimes when you write about myths from any country are always a little weird because they're usually simplistic and the behavior of the gods or whatever being is in it is a little strange. And so it's like the god was upset and then he stabbed 5 people. It's not rational most times. I feel like that's what it is. The things that have happened so far in here are not very rational. And so I'm trying to wrap my mind around the idea that this is interactions with gods. It's just, I feel like there's a way to write the irrational from these old mythical stories in a way that makes sense to a modern reader. And I'm kind of fighting with that right now. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to leave a comment under this video because by the time it goes live, I will have finished it. And I'm going to tell you guys what my final stars on this are because I'm going to reserve my stars for the moment. If I had to give stars today, it'd be maybe like a 3.3. I gotta figure out if I'm gonna say stars or pandas. What's the deal? What's the deal? Is it a panda? Is it a star? I would say a 3.3, whatever it's gonna be. And only because it's only higher than Ana Maria and the Fox because there's clearly much more lore in here and there's a larger, richer world that has been built. But if the interactions and the action and the dialogue is awkward, you throw all that out the window for me. Again, this could be just a really great beginner story for somebody. Fantastical, exciting. It's just not where I'm at in my reading journey. But we'll find out. I'm going to let you guys know. I hope you guys enjoyed my jaunt to Steamy Lit. If you are ever in the Deerfield Beach area, you definitely need to go. Again, it's an adorable shop. I loved the whole experience of being there. I want to go back now that I know what kind of books that I'm looking for and get more of those kinds of books and see if I can find stories about brown people written in the countries that they're from and not going on a journey to some European place, because we don't need to go there no more. We don't need to go there no more. And this idea that we need to go there makes me feel like we're saying that these worlds, like this upper class world, like this kind of romance where it's like, and he looked across at her and she looked across at him, that's set in like a fancy space, didn't exist in other countries. And it did. And so I want to find those. And I feel like Steamy Lit has them. And I'm going to go find them. Subscribe, like, subscribe, follow, do all those things if you want to come on my next journey to Steamy Lit. So you'll know where we're going, what we're doing. Also, there's a live video for me getting ready for this video where I kind of talk about some of these topics and the background of my feelings and my full kind of experience and visit to Steamy Lit. So if you're interested in that and watching me do my makeup and get ready, go and check out that live. See you in the next one, book friends. Bye.